In the last video in the series on conlanging, we decided upon a set of goals to set the stage for your conlang. Today, we will make a sound inventory, all the sounds your conlang will use in speech. This is the International Phonetic Alphabet, otherwise known as the IPA. It's a collection of every sound that the human vocal tract can produce consistently, written in the standardized IPA notation. Now there are three aspects of sound that makes it unique: the place of articulation, the manner of articulation, and the voicing. First of all, the place of articulation is where in the mouth the sound is produced, starting in the front and going to the back. In consonants, these positionings are bilabial, labiodental, dental, alveolar, postalveolar, retroflex, palatal, velar, uvular, and glottal. Next, the manner of articulation, represented by the rows of the IPA, is the way the sound is produced. Consonants can either be plosive, fricative, affricate, nasal, approximant, tap or flap, trill, lateral approximant, and so much more. Vowels, on the other hand, are much simpler, the manner of articulation being only based off how open the mouth is. Finally, voicing is whether or not the vocal cords vibrate when producing the sound. For instance, sa is unvoiced, and so the vocal cords are not used when producing it. On the other hand, za is the voiced version of sa, and so has a certain vibration produced by the vocal cords. Now, there are two types of consonants. There are obstruents, which contain a voiced and unvoiced version, and consist of plosives, fricatives, and affricates. And sonorants, aka resonants, which consist of approximants, tap or flaps, trills, and lateral approximants, often referred to as liquids, and nasals. This distinction may come in handy when developing phonotactics. A final note, there is also a special class of consonants called click consonants. I can't pronounce any of these properly. Let's just say that sounds like can also be a part of human language and are used in some South African languages. However, I wouldn't advise you to use these in your language unless you are knowledgeable about them. Every language has a sound inventory, a chart displaying exactly what sounds are present. Your first step when making a conlang is creating an inventory of consonants and vowels for your language to use. I have some advice for this. First of all, I would advise basing your sound inventory off an existing language's inventory, at least for your first conlang. Next, explore the IPA and see what sounds you want to use. Wikipedia is a good source for this, as it contains audio files for almost every sound in the IPA. Please note that the symbols used in the International Phonetic Alphabet can be different than the letters in English. For instance, the palatal fricative, that looks like a J, is pronounced ya, like the English Y. Also, the vowel I is pronounced E instead of I. In fact, Spanish is a great reference point for the pronunciation of these vowels, as they resemble the correct sounds very closely. Anyway, before adding any sounds, make sure that you can pronounce all of them, otherwise you won't be able to speak your own language. For instance, I can't roll my R's, and so I never include a rolled R in my language. Also, make sure that it makes sense what sounds are in your language. Some sounds are more common than others, and so it's best to keep the number of rare sounds to a minimum. The most common consonants are pa, ta, ka, ma, and na. And the most common vowels are e, a, o, and u. Almost every language contains these sounds, so when creating a conlang, your safest bet is to include them. On the other hand, pharyngeal consonants and click consonants are both rare and should be generally avoided. Interestingly, English's the is relatively quite rare as well. Finally, when you are ready to start adding and removing sounds, if you want your language to be naturalistic, it is best to use the tactic of sound symmetry. When adding or removing sounds, you should add or change sounds based on their position in the chart. For instance, it is naturalistic to remove or add entire voicings in a single column or row. Most importantly, less is more. Try to end with a relatively small sound inventory of only 20 to 30 sounds. This will make it easier to manage and it will make your language sound much more distinct. So, now that we have that out of the way, let's build our example language's sound inventory. First, I'd like to base the language's consonants off of English because all the sounds are familiar and easy for me to change. Next, I am going to remove all the voiced plosives, leaving us with only pa, ta, and ka. Now, although this may seem drastic, this is actually quite a common technique in conlanging, removing all the voiced plosives. Also, pa, ta, and ka are all very easy to articulate quickly, which fits into my goals. Also, English sort of includes the glottal stop, but I am making it a full feature in my language, as I just love using it. As for the nasals, I like both ma and na, but na just takes too long to pronounce. In fact, I realized that for this example language, I'd like all my consonants to be towards the front of the mouth. Not only will this make it quick to articulate, but it will also make it much simpler to work with and make the language sound distinct. So let's get rid of nga, ka, and ha. I would get rid of the glottal stop, but let's just make it a rare usage. Also, let's remove all the voiced fricatives because they also take too long to pronounce. Finally, I'd like to add the tap or flap R, as in aranya, and that is all. That leaves us with a consonant chart of 15 consonants, certainly on the shorter side, but nothing crazy. Now, what about vowels? First, let's start with the traditional 5-vowel system that most languages have. In fact, I'm just going to stick with this, no changes required. I would use the English sounds like I did for the consonants, but English just has so many vowels that I just don't find it necessary. So that's it. I would add some diphthongs to flesh out my vowels, but we're already getting close to my self-set 24 sound maximum, and remember, less is more. I hope you all enjoy this overview of how to make a sound inventory for your conlang. Sorry I haven't been uploading much recently. This summer I hope to make more of a commitment to my YouTube channel. If you have any questions or suggestions on further content, please feel free to say them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to read them. Thanks for watching, and goodbye!